Hey everyone, welcome to my studio. It's not the prettiest environment you're ever going to see. My studio is in the garage of our house, which is naturally very dusty, very dark, very cold. Not a very nice environment, but I've sort of tried to make it feel a bit more homely so that I'm happy working in here, and I am, because I'm really grateful to actually have a space that I don't have to rent it out. Obviously I'm paying rent, but not extra rent, just to have a space in which I can do whatever I want to. And of course I get like tons of storage space, and it does lead to a bit of hoarding, to be honest with you. You could do with a bit of tidying. I hate tidying the studio, let's not even go there. There's no real structure to today's video at all. I was just out of ideas temporarily, but I am halfway through painting some glass jars, so I thought I might just finish those off on camera and you can sort of see me painting. I can maybe teach you a little bit about colours and colour theory and what I do to actually paint my jars. That might be quite interesting, you never know. As you can see, as I previously mentioned, it is quite dark in here. I've actually switched on extra lights today so that you can see me, and it's still not great, but at least you can see this bit here. This is where I'll be working, so that's the important bit, I suppose. The buzzing in the background, which you can probably hear, is my heater. There is a fan heater underneath the table to keep me warm, because it's so cold down here. Even though it's warm outside, it's still freezing down here. So as I said, I'm painting jars. I have got a couple of finished ones next to me here. So because I refill an awful lot of the products we buy at home, I just reuse loads of jars, but the trouble is most of them aren't labelled, so only I know what's in every single jar in our cupboards. Bit of a problem when I'm not there to help people, you know, identify everything, especially if they can't tell what it is by smelling it. So this is the turmeric jar. Quite pleased with that one. It's just the turmeric plant, and you know what it is on the front should be fairly obvious for people now. The one I'm doing today is the sunflower oil jar. Beautiful bottle. I love bottles and jars. Has anybody noticed? I mean, on the quick clip that you would have seen me walking around my space, I mean, you saw my beautiful antique sewing machine is absolutely covered in empty jars. Sacrilege, I know, I'm sorry. I'll fix that at some point. But they're all sort of like halfway through a process. They either need painting or cleaning, or the label's soaking off. I don't know, I haven't sorted it out. It needs, like I said, it's tidying down here. As you can see, I've sort of already started this one. It takes a long time to build up layers on a glass jar because the paint tends to like squidge and move around as it gets wet on the really thin layers, so you have to build it up very gradually. But to get anywhere today, I thought I'd better make a start yesterday. Some of them are looking like the BP logo. Do you think? Does the BP logo even look like that anymore? I don't know. They're sunflowers anyway, because obviously this is a sunflower oil jar. It used to be a mead bottle. Lovely mead bottle. Oh, love it. So when I sit up down here, I nearly always have my laptop just on the table next to me there, just so I can listen to some music or some videos or something in the background, keep me entertained while I'm working. And then all my paints will be just here on the table. I'm on a jeweler's bench currently. It's meant to be better for your back because it's much higher than normal, although my chair's up quite high at the moment. I paint slightly higher up, but the chair goes down here. This is the sort of height you should be working at if you're doing any jewellery, because my bench peg is just there. Yeah, it was a very expensive purchase, but well worth the money. Oh, and you're probably going to hear some random interference, like noise-wise, every now and then in any of the spoken word parts of the video, because upstairs, directly above, is the kitchen. It's obviously a high traffic area part of the house. There are people up there right now doing washing up and stuff, so you're going to hear footsteps and noise. Right on cue. I don't know if anybody heard that, but that is Cookie barking upstairs. She's after her treat after her walk, I think. She's just got home. Anyway, this is my paint palette, and I only ever use 5 colours. So I've got yellow, red, blue, white and black. I mean, technically white and black are shades, but from these 5 colours you can make pretty much anything. I'm not entirely sure why I actually got blue out, because I don't think I'm going to be using blue today, so that was a bit of a mistake, but oh well. At least I didn't put much of it out. I never put much out of black either. It is such a strong colour. And when I was studying fine art, we always used to say that there's no such thing as black in a natural landscape, which is in entirely true. I mean, black is not a natural colour by any means, it's a man-made colour. But I do have it because I'm going to be painting sunflowers, and it's just going to help me with the brown parts of the centre of the sunflower. But yeah, you really don't need much because it's such a strong colour. So these are my brushes. Nothing fancy at all really, and slightly stained. That's my really cheap big flat brush for getting large amounts of paint on huge surfaces. And I'm not too worried about that one falling apart because it's sort of just a crappy brush. These are the ones I use most often. Got 3 different sizes. One really, 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 really tiny one. It is minuscule, quite hard to use, but it's, yeah, it's good for fine detail. Then that's the one I tend to prefer to use to mix my colours, but also larger areas of painting. And then a sort of middle-sized one. This is the one I will use most frequently, I would say, for painting on jars, because it's the right kind of size for that sort of thing. I've got a terrible habit of leaving my paintbrushes in water overnight. Don't do that. Oh my god, never do that to your brushes. You bend the tips, so then you don't have a straight brush stroke in them anymore, and then of course the metal rusts and the paint comes off the wood. Don't ever leave them in water like I do, because it's not good for the brushes at all. I've also got these two. It's another big flat one and then a slightly smaller flat one. These are for my varnish. I have separate brushes for varnish to paint because they tend to get ruined much more quickly, especially if you don't clean them out properly. And then my paints are just really cheap. Bold mirror acrylic. I would quite like ones that are better than this, but I've got such a huge amount of them. I must have bulk bought them at some point. I've got tons of them to use up, so until they run out, I'll stick with them. So I'm going to make a start. I'm just going to carry on building up. So I'm probably going to work one sunflower at a time, but I still need to build up some layers on these. This is the one that's currently in process. You can see it's slightly thicker, slightly less see-through than all the others. I'm going to work on the lower petals first. As you can see that the darker petals are underneath, so do those first, because then when you paint over the top, you're not going to be, you know, interfering with the top layer. So I'm going to need a bit of orange, or very pale orange, for the lower petals. So a bit of colour theory for you. It sounds really basic to anyone who knows it, but I've met an astonishing amount of adults who have no idea what colours mix to make other colours, and that upsets me greatly. So I'm fixing that now. Tiny bit of yellow, and then the weeniest amount of red. As I said, red is really strong, so it is going to mix and overpower the yellow quite a bit. Might not get it right straight away if you give things like this a go, but it's fun to try, you know? Now I do more often than not mix my initial colours on my palette, but one of the more sort of advanced things that a lot of painters do, I mean if any of you have seen Bob Ross paint anything, he mixes a lot of colours on his canvas. I do the same on some of mine. So the sunflower I've just been painting, I obviously started off with that pale orange colour and then added red on the glass and then mixed it through. It's not easy to do if you're a beginner, I'm not going to lie, but once you get more experience it just becomes just sort of second nature to do that. So it has to be wet, obviously. It doesn't mix if it's not wet, so nice thick paint is best for mixing on your subject. So some of the details of the petals I'm going to add in sort of outlining and clean up in the last stage of painting. So I've just gone over the top layer of petals with more yellow. So when you paint the bottom layer first, you can be as messy as you like. It doesn't matter if you cross over outlines or anything, because when you do your top layer you can go over that and clean it up a little bit. So as I mentioned before, yellow is a really pale and thin kind of acrylic colour, so I had to put a lot on for it to cover up some of the orange. But I need to let that dry for a little bit before I can carry on with it anyway, because it is very thick now. So the yellow's dried enough to carry on working on now. And opposite to the lower petals, I put dark in the centre and moved it outwards to sort of colour match the two layers better. I'm going to put the darker orange over the tips of the yellow petals and bring it in, so that it kind of overall looks more like one sunflower rather than like two stacked up on top of each other, because at the moment the two colours are quite different from each other. So I'm just going to do that. There we go. It's a little bit better blended now. Speaking of blending, I don't necessarily always do it with a clean brush, which is like a painting cardinal sin. But when you're blending two colours together, I find it quite useful to still have a little bit of the previous colour inside the brush when you're mixing the new colour in. So I will just dunk a dirty brush into a new colour, mix it on the jar. Like I said, painting sin, but you know, I know what I'm doing, sort of. So it works for me. When you're more practiced, you can just sort of get away with little habits like that will work. Obviously, if you're going to go for a completely different colour, wash your brush out. I'm quite happy with the petals on that one now. I'm not going for hyper realism on these jars, just something sort of vaguely nice to look at. As long as it looks vaguely like a sunflower in the end, it's okay. As it is a jar, it's a different sort of surface to painting on a canvas. A canvas will soak in a lot of the colour and you sort of get a flatter image, but building up layers on a jar you will get lots of knobbly bobbly bits, shall we say, because it doesn't soak into the glass, and wiping it around can make your painting quite messy, so it will end up a little bit lumpy. But again, I don't really mind that at all. My paint dries out quite quickly in here, obviously because I have the heater on. I'm not having the heater on because I will die. But it does mean the paints get quite sort of dry quite quickly down here, which is not particularly normal, but this is not a normal studio, so just got to work with what you're given, really. So carrying on with my main sunflower, I'm going to mix a pale yellow to go over the top of some of the top petals. It's going to look like shading is the idea. So the top layer is obviously the most exposed to the sunlight, so that's going to be brighter than the petals below. Probably going to do that on the tips again, inwards, but not across the whole petal like the orange was. Again, still quite hard to see, sorry about that. But yeah, we've got a little bit of lighting on the petals now. I think I'm pretty much ready to do the centre of the sunflower, which is going to be a brown colour. So for brown, pretty much if you mix all colours together, it will always make brown. Brown is like the mud colour. But when I mix the brown, I always use a bit of red, a bit of yellow, tiniest little bit of black, but if you use blue that will also do the same sort of thing, just a slightly different tone, and then you can add more or less red or yellow and a bit of white depending on what kind of brown you need. So we've got the middle of our sunflower done. So as I said, I started off with that little brown to get the dark into it. I got the tiniest amount of black and just dabbed it into the still wet brown so that it blends in. And then for the lighter areas, it's sort of a mixture of more red, white, yellow, all kinds really, just to sort of get a nice mixture of tone. So what I'm going to do next is just put a much lighter ring of pale yellow just around the outside of the centre, and then I can sort of do some vague outlining on it. It's not outlining in like the traditional sense of like big thick black lines. I'm going to do it with shaded colours instead, so it kind of looks more natural and gives the sunflower a little bit more detail. So for my outline colours, I'm literally just going to use a really watered down white, because that will be pale enough to make an effect, but it will also be slightly opaque, so it won't overtake too much from the sunflower. That will be the lighter outline. And then for my darker outline, it's going to be a very reddy orange, so that orange that we used earlier for the sunflower petals, I'm just going to add more red to. So there's quite a lot of red there. It's quite a bold orange that I've gone for, because again we want that to have a decent effect on the painting that's already there. But again, I'll water that down too, so that it's not so stark that it looks unrealistic. There we go, that's my finished sunflower. So as you can see, I didn't go overboard on the outlining. I put more of the white on the upper petals and more of the darker orange on the lower petals, just to sort of keep with the shading I've gone for. But all it's done really is just sort of emphasise that they're flower petals. Works pretty well. So that needs varnishing. Probably going to varnish each flower separately on this bottle, because as I turn the bottle around I keep catching the other ones with my hands and like damaging the paint that I've already done. So I'll varnish this first and then move on to the others. So I use a really specific varnish on my jars. I use this one. It's a Mod Podge one. It is dishwasher safe gloss varnish. So in theory, this means that your paintwork on the jars won't come off when you wash it, in particular in the dishwasher. Now, we don't have a dishwasher, we have our own hands and we have a sink. So I haven't been able to test whether or not it actually stays on inside, you know, a much more powerful machine. But they do work in just, you know, warm soapy water isn't going to affect it if you use this varnish on it. And the only thing I will say though is when you're putting it on, you need to do it in as few strokes as possible, because it can lift the paint off the glass as you're varnishing it, especially the black. Where the black is so plastic, it like moves around on the glass an awful lot. So something really thick probably isn't going to be damaged too badly, but if you're doing delicate work on a jar, as few strokes as you possibly can. Maybe a lighter varnish on the first coat. I always double coat the varnish layers on my jars, just because the second coat you can really get sort of like a thick layer on it so that you know it's going to be protected. One of the advantages of this varnish is that it dries pretty quickly, so the second coat can go on fairly soon. At the moment it does look, you can see it on the glass, it's very obvious that I've varnished that. The white bits do fade as it dries, it does dry completely clear, so it's not going to look ridiculous when that's finished, but it is going to protect my little flower for me, so that's pretty good. So I'm going to level with you guys. Painting does take a long time. I started this at about 11 in the morning. It's now 3:30. I promise you I didn't just do this one sunflower in that time. There were other things going on. I mean, I was filming, so I did do that. But also I've had lunch and painted some of the orange petals on some of the other sunflowers while I was waiting for the varnish to dry. But I am going to finish there, I think. If I wasn't filming, I probably would have had most of this jar done by this point, because I would have just worked continuously. But yeah. That's all for now, I think. I've done at least one sunflower that you can see, so that's good for me. I hope you've enjoyed it though. Slightly unusual video, not very well lit, poor sound quality, you name it, it could all go wrong. But I think it's gone alright, sort of. I might do more of this next week. I might have more jars to finish, or I might literally just do proper colour theory, maybe, not sure, haven't quite decided yet. We'll see when we get there. Thanks very much for watching, guys. See ya. Obviously a high traffic area of the house. I think Mum's upstairs